vi kunne jo hatt et bord, men... Okay, do I have sound? No. Now I have sound. Thanks a lot. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Tromsø. And also those of you that are taking part online, welcome. My name is Rune Vistad. I'm Director for International Cooperation at the Research Council of Norway, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Council. We have invited you here to highlight the experience and the outcomes of EA Norway grants projects. This funding scheme has been actively supporting Arctic research for almost 2 decades. But still, it's less known than national funding, European funding, so we try to do something about that today. First of all, I think we will give the word to Astis after a little while to explain you all about the EA and Norway grants. It's a pleasure to have Astis here. I was a bit worried because I saw her, she went away, and yeah. Because this is actually also a bilateral cooperation between Norway and Iceland, but it works in its way. Well, the EA and Norway grants, they support a wide range of initiatives and topics, but we will focus on data collection and accessibility today in Arctic research. So we will have a panel after Astis that will discuss what happens to data after they are collected by the project. How can we make sure that data is shared and made accessible to all that need it? This session is particularly timely as the EA and Norway grants are currently in transition from one funding period to another funding period. And I believe that better integration and collection of and coordination of funding schemes can be achieved to the benefit of all. This is why the second panel today will focus on the potential for coordination of funding across countries, programs, and schemes. We actually had a little discussion just before we started here with some Polish colleagues that this is sort of, you know, the EA and Norway grants, they are very good, a lot of funds, but they sort of come every 7th year, and then it's a lot of money, and then it sort of goes a bit away. So how can we deal with that? Thank to all of you for being here, and I really look forward to the discussions and valuable insights that will emerge from this session. And now I invite Astis from the Financial Mechanism Office to explain all about the grants. Astis, please.
Thank you, Rune. You want me to stand up? Yeah. So look at this like this. So very nice to see you all today. I'm here actually in the program. My colleague Alexandra Haugstad from the Research Council of Norway was going to present the grants to you, but unfortunately she is at home ill. So maybe she is looking at us in the streaming. But my name is Astis Jonsdottir. I'm a Senior Sector Officer for Research at the EA Norway Grants. And I'm here to tell you about the grants, why we exist, and what we do when it comes to research generally, but maybe climate change and Arctic research more specifically. So what are the grants? What are the basis for the grants? So the grants have their foundation within the EEA agreement, and the EEA here stands for European Economic Area. And the EEA agreement brings the EEA-EFTA countries, 3 countries, Iceland, Norway, and Liechtenstein, into the EU's internal market. And so the 3 countries contribute to reducing social and economic disparities in Europe through the EEA agreement, but reducing social and economic disparities is not the only objective of the grants, but also to increase bilateral collaboration with the 3 donor states and the beneficiary countries. So we work through funding periods. I'm going to jump straight to this slide. So the first funding period was in 2004 to 9, and so we are about to finalize the third one. It says 14-21, but actually we are in the process of finalizing this funding period now, because the period of eligibility is a little bit longer than the funding period itself. And as Rune mentioned, we are in the process of preparing for the next one, which is actually 21-28. And you will notice that 21 has already passed a long time ago. But as now the period of eligibility is longer, until 31 actually. So it's important to know that when you see the dates. But let me go back. The grants are not only research funder. We have actually funded projects. We have funded this time 6,700 projects on 5 different sectors. So I forgot to mention, maybe I'll go back. I forgot to mention that we work with 15 beneficiary states. They are in the light blue color on this picture. And these are exactly the same countries that are referred to as the widening countries within Horizon Europe. And we support projects within these 5 sectors. So what I will talk about today is the competitiveness sector, which is innovation, research, and education, the first one there. But I thought it might be interesting also for you to, if I say something about the third one, environment, energy, and climate. So in the first one, we have about 1,800 projects that were funded under that one. We have very, very many small education projects. So it's a lot of projects that have all finalized now, because we are closing this funding period. But in the environment, energy, and climate, we have funded 760 projects. But these are mainly on supporting our beneficiary states to implement EU legislation and policies on topics such as reduction of waste, biodiversity, circular economy, climate adaptation, and renewable energy. So that also relates to the topic of this conference. And we expect, I will tell you a little bit about our priorities for the next funding period, but the green portfolio, the green projects, programs, there will be even a stronger focus on this this time around. So, if we look specifically at research, what have we achieved in research? So, the grants have supported research for 229 million euro in 7 beneficiary states, all the 3 Baltic states, Czechia, Poland, Portugal, and Romania. And we have supported 264 projects. 95% of those projects have bilateral partnerships. So 95% of the funding is to projects that have a partner from the bilateral countries, because one of the main objectives in research is to contribute to the internationalization of research. For us, it's very important that the projects actually also include a bilateral partner, so a partner from one of the 3 donor states. Approximately 45% of the funding has gone to basic research and 55% to applied research. So just to give you a little taste of the breadth of support. So our projects come from all fields of science. Many of them built on an interdisciplinary approach. They cover a wide variety of research topics. Here we have examples, just random examples of good projects. Probiotic cheese in Lithuania. 3D printing of bones, a collaboration between partners in Czechia and Iceland. Research on sacred places in the Baltic states with partners from Norway. Groundwater monitoring in Romania. I think this project is, otherwise the Romanians. Yes, excellent. So I will talk a little bit more about this one. It's an interesting picture. It's on climate change and emotions in collaboration between partners in Poland and Norway. Here's a project on geothermal heat and earthquakes, partnership between partners in Czechia and Iceland. And on pharmaceutical pollution in the ocean, Arctic Ocean, with partners from Poland and Norway. And I would also like to mention, because I think it's very relevant for today, and we will hear more about that in the panel, the Atlantic Observatory project, which is funded under the grants program in Portugal, which has served to enhance research and monitoring of the ocean. So we will hear more about that today. But I think we have added value in the European funding environment because we work with the widening states and we support excellence, we support the internationalization of research, and we see ourselves as a stepping stone towards Horizon Europe. And from the start, from 2004, when we ran the first program, we have had projects on the environment and on climate change, including on the Arctic. But I would like to tell you a little bit more about what we have been supporting in this period, focusing on Poland. Now, why would we focus specifically on Poland? Because there the contribution, or there the project, the focus on the Arctic has been particularly strong. We have a basic research program in Poland where run by the National Science Center in Krakow. And polar research is one of our main priorities in this program. And Poland has a long history of scientific presence in the Arctic and bilateral collaboration with Norway, focusing mainly on Svalbard. We have, so this picture was drawn. I think it's a fun picture, but you can see the different examples of projects in the red, little red flags there. And Cryos is a project that led by the Center of Polar Studies at the University of Silesia with 11 partners from Norway and Poland. And it's a project the grants have supported from 22 until last year. The aim was to establish a large, standardized, automated monitoring network on the cryosphere, on sea ice and glaciers in Svalbard, to provide high-quality data and with real-time transfer to repositories. And Cryos operates within the Svalbard Integrated Arctic Earth Observing System, SIOS. So it works within the framework of a larger international research infrastructure that aims to support long-time measurements on the changes in and around Svalbard. So we're very proud of that project. And there's another one I would like to mention, which is not on this slide, called HAR-SVAL, which is a continuation of Cryos, with increasing the range of research and more focus on enhancing capacity and skills and increasing the visibility of Polish polar community. And with much more partners than Cryos, actually 25 partners, including 14 from Norway. Explored, actually, all these projects are finalized, sedimentary ancient DNA as a proxy to look at the impact of environmental change on biodiversity near Svalbard. Farmarine, I have a video for you which will hopefully work at the end of my presentation on this project, but it's a collaboration between the University of Gdansk and Norwegian partners to understand the impact of human medicine pollution in the ocean on marine life in the Arctic. Svelta is the University of Wrocław on river delta systems in Svalbard and the response to accelerated warming. This is climate research, but I think much of this is also looking at the north. So FORCE, looking at wetlands and climate change with Warsaw University and partners in Norway. Buffer is led by the University of Gdansk on the capacity of sediments to process and retain nutriments in the current context of climate change. And finally, let me mention MCLIC, which is about understanding the emotional responses to climate change in relation to mental health and climate action. So it's the same project as I showed a picture from on an earlier slide with the Nenki Institute of Experimental Biology in Poland, collaborating with NTNU here in Norway. So this is to give you an insight into what the grants have been supporting when it comes to polar research and Arctic research and climate research. What happens now? Since we have finalized these projects, we are finalizing the programs. So in last September, there was the EEF, the countries signed a new period with the EU on the next funding period, 21-28, as I said before. And the total funding is 3.3 billion, approximately. We don't know how much of this will be allocated to research. With three thematic priorities: the green transition, democracy, rule of law and human rights, and social inclusion and resilience. And there are ongoing negotiations on how this funding will be used in the beneficiary states. And this takes time and needs to take, and is taking place now in 25 and 26, which means that there's uncertainty now as to when we can have our next calls and how much funding will be allocated to research. But this is definitely going to be a gap period when it comes to calls. So we won't see any calls this year, and probably not until maybe, if we're optimistic, late next year or even 27. What is new? What we will do? What will be? We have had good, successful programs, but we will place more emphasis on the valorization of research in the next funding period to enhance the societal, economic, and cultural impact of research, and increasing the engagement between science and society. Bridge, and I think bridges are very much what is needed now in times of accelerating climate change and disinformation and science denial. So we will be focusing on developing new ways of reaching out and of engaging society and engaging stakeholders, etc. So that's my introduction to the grants with some examples, and I think, and we will of course hear more from the panels today, looking very much forward to it. But we will have now a short video which shows you an example of Farmarine, which is one of the projects I mentioned from the basic research program in Poland. So please, if you can.
Access to medicine is one of the conditions for a healthy society. Yet, somewhere along the production and consumption chain, most medication ends up in our oceans.
The threat posed by pharmaceutical residue in the ocean remains unclear. To assess the risk, we need large-scale interdisciplinary research combining biochemistry, ecotoxicology, and oceanography.
Thanks to the Farmarine project, which was funded by Norway grants, teams of Polish and Norwegian scientists had the opportunity to join forces and study risks and transfer of pharmaceutical residues in the Arctic.
Nowadays, empirical data on pharmaceutical concentrations in the oceans are very scarce. In the Farmarine project, we collected on board the research vessel Oceania a number of marine samples and started measurements on drug concentrations in water, zooplankton and benthic animals like shrimps, bivalves, sea stars to assess the contamination status of the Arctic ecosystem.
I am marine biologist working in the Institute of Oceanology in Sopot. Together with my colleagues, we are collecting samples of marine fauna and flora in the Arctic for our chemist colleagues in Norway and Poland. Using the most advanced lab equipment and technologies, they examine the samples to assess information on pharmaceuticals in the Arctic ecosystem.
We're only now learning about the risks that pharmaceutical residues extend on the marine ecosystems. That's why we need decision makers to act now to protect future generations and wildlife.
Initial data obtained through the Farmarine project indicates a need for comprehensive regulations on pharmaceuticals in our oceans. Thanks to the Norway grants, frontier research is encouraging stronger environmental protection policies in Europe and the world.
We only had the audio of half of it. I think it's fine. I think you still got the picture, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Astis. As we are a bit ahead of time, if there are any questions for Astis? You don't take questions? I can take questions. I can answer them. Okay, I can't see any hands, but yeah. I just want to say that I am not as pessimistic as you as regards when we will have the first calls. No. I hope. Yeah, I hope next year. Okay, so...
you mentioned 26, huh?
Yeah, you did mention 26 as well. So let's work for that. But anyways, now we are going to have 2 panel discussions. So welcome to the first panel. It's on infrastructure and data projects in Poland and Portugal, which will explore the experience from some of these 3 initiatives, 3 projects that were funded by the grants in the previous period, and they are sort of transforming the collection and availability of research data for polar and climate research. It's CRIAS, Astis mentioned that project, Harsval, and the Atlantic Observatory projects. And we have invited 3 colleagues from Poland and Portugal who were central in these transformative projects. And in our discussions, we will explore the alignment of practices, establishment of platforms, and a cultural shift in relation to handling data. So I would like to invite Tanja Silveira to the podium, please. Take a seat. She's from the Portuguese Institute for Sea and Atmosphere, INPA. And project coordinator for the Atlantic Observatory. Good to have you here. And then Darius, and now I stop pronouncing the last names because they are Polish and it's too many consonants. Welcome. And then Barbara to the end from the National Science Center in Krakow.
Mine is most difficult.
Yeah, yours is very difficult. Yeah, and I forgot to say that Darius is also the project coordinator of CRIAS and Harsval. Please take a seat. So, if we start with Tanja and Derek, if you could shortly describe the role and how the platform established by CRIAS, Harsval, and the Atlantic Observatory projects should contribute to enhance data accessibility and integration. And I was planning to be extremely strict on time. I said 3 minutes. You will get 4.
Okay, thank you. Should I start?
Yeah, you can start.
I don't know if this works. No.
Yeah, it works.
It does? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me and inviting the Portuguese Institute for Sea and Atmosphere to be here. It's a pleasure. And, well, I coordinated the project, the Atlantic Observatory Data and Monitoring Infrastructure Project, funded by the EEA grants. The project had three main objectives. One of them was to strengthen Portugal's capacity for ocean monitoring. So we acquired new oceanographic equipment, not only IPMA, but also our other two national partners from the islands, the Azores and Madeira. So that was one of the objectives. The other one was to develop this new marine data infrastructure, digital infrastructure, which was done by my institute. And the third objective was to foster the bilateral relations with Iceland and Norway, and that was very good. So all the objectives were, I think, a success and achieved. We did have COVID in the middle, and that was a big setback in our timeline. But overall, it was a very successful project, and we did achieve all of what we were supposed to do. It was very, very good.
Excellent. Yes, please. Sorry.
Good morning, Dariusz Ignaciuk from the University of Silesia in Katowice and Polish Polar Consortium. I had a pleasure to be part of the two projects from the EEA and Norway grant. The first one was CRIOS for Integrated Observatory Network on Svalbard. I was leading one of the work packages there. And the second one was HARSFAL, a bilateral initiative to increase the cooperation on Svalbard. And in those two projects, we have a bit different goals. For the CRIOS project, we mostly focus to standardize the monitoring system in cooperation between 7 Polish and 4 Norwegian partners. We close the gaps in knowledge and install new installation on Svalbard. One of our goals was also work on the standardization of the data and measurements protocols. And last but not least, everywhere it was possible, we installed the real transfer of the data to the system. So we follow the proper standards, both in CRIOS and HARSFAL project in line with the SIOS data management system and SIOS policy that is in line with the FAIR principles. For the HARSFAL project, the goals were a bit different. We focus about the building the community. One of the work packages was focused on the pilot studies, as we have a lot of discussion that in the typical project, research projects, you have some thesis or hypothesis that you are following, and there is no time for the improvisation. So we start to, for concrete task, collect the interdisciplinary scientists, put them in the field, check it, make a brainstorm, and check what will go out from that. And I need to assure that the results are very, very interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. And Barbara, you can use this mic because it's wireless. Could you describe your role and also comment on the type of projects and why they are needed?
So my name is Barbara Świątkowska. I work at the National Science Center. The National Science Center is a funding agency in Poland. We fund basic research, and these projects that we have funded here, these are not research projects, because these we fund through open calls, and these are also not hard research infrastructures, but these are projects aiming at tackling certain challenges that we see. And it's really an amazing opportunity that the grants give us, that there is this space for this kind of initiatives where there is a collaboration between the scientific community, the funders, and also international organizations. So these projects give us a possibility to talk
about research priorities, about strategies, about challenges. And I have to say that the cooperation with the Polar community is amazing because you already have all those networks, like we have in Poland, the Polish Polar Consortium, but there is SciES, with which we collaborate, and also other organizations where this kind of strategies are already built, and there is this work going on identifying research needs and so on. So we are trying with those projects to go for those areas in which the community already agreed that there are the challenges. And a lot of focus in those projects is dedicated to capacity building, to international collaboration, to internationalization, interdisciplinarity, but also communication, at a level which is not possible in a single research project. And there is also space for input from the funding agency, so us and the RCN, and we bring our perspective to the table and present it to the scientists. And also, this leads to very interesting results. But then we have also this opportunity to talk to the scientists and see what maybe we should bring in our funding schemes so that the result is the best.
Excellent. And now if we can have a bit more general discussion on the culture, how is this project, how are they sort of facilitated the shift in the culture of handling data? If you could be a bit concrete on that, and the floor is open. So, yeah.
Well, it's a very specific and hard question because data dissemination, data integration, data availability has been it's been talked about for a long time. At least in Portugal, we've been trying to do it for a long time, and there's been other previous projects that didn't have much success. So it is an issue in Portugal, and I think elsewhere. This project in particular, we did benefit a lot from our partners in Norway and Iceland, specifically Norway, because you have so much experience in your marine data center from IMR. So what we did, in concrete and some examples, we tried to do it a little bit different this time, and we decided to create a solution for data ingestion and data management that could be done by the researchers on their own. So the solution is there and it's implemented, and now we're working with the researchers to define the protocols for data ingestion and management and dissemination, and they can go in on their own and input the data, ingest the data, and then put it out there in GIS form in whatever form they want. So it's a little bit different this time, and we hope it's successful. So that because you can do the solutions and build the infrastructures, but if you don't feed it, it will eventually die. And what happens in Portugal, we don't have a big infrastructure, we don't have many human resources to keep this kind of heavy infrastructures. So this was the way we thought we could go forward and rely on the researchers and how they can see it as a benefit for their own research, to put it out there and share it. Another example, we have an automated DOY. So when the researcher puts in the data, fills in the metadata, it automatically gets a DOI, which is a digital object identifier, which is used for their own benefit in the way that it can be cited. So we're doing these little things different from what we did in the past to try to make the shift in the culture and in the way researchers look and see benefits in sharing the data. But it is a hard and very difficult task.
Thank you. That is.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a very difficult task, and we deal with that in both of our projects. But as a Polish community, we were a bit in the better situation because from the several years, we are cooperating with SIOS, third-party integrating observing system. And they are building the international distributed system that we are part of. So already some of our data repositories are trying to fit to those standards, and they are already connected to the SIOS data portal. But starting from the beginning, from the Cryos project, when we start to plan buying all the equipment and instruments, I think that one of the biggest success of us was that we were able to make joint tenders for several universities. So we were sure that all the equipment, all the instruments will be the same. And it will be much more easier to harmonize the data and data protocols in future database. And also thanks to the cooperation with Norwegian partners and the funds in Harsfall project, we start the modernization of Polish Polar database, and similar like in your case, thanks to the funds we are able to add the DOIs to the system, so it's follow now much more better the fair data, fair principles. And we use quite a lot of efforts for the trainings and workshops. They were both online, physical, so during the last year we have more than 10 trainings, and it was in the wider scale for open community, but also small meetings dedicated to concrete institutes and concrete universities, that way answering to their questions and their problems. Mm-hmm. So this is more or less how we did it.
Yeah, and you feel that this actually contributed to a shift in culture by the scientists.
Yeah, exactly. So, but as we know, it takes years. It takes years to shift that because, so that's the reason why we put quite a lot of efforts to work with the PhD students. Because if we will start to learn them how to properly manage the data at this level, that they don't need to wait for the first projects. They can already implement the data management plan in their PhD process, and it will help them a lot to structurize their work and enable the sharing the data in the proper manner.
Barbara, any reflections from you? You are sort of a bit on the other side, not directly into the project, but from a more bird's eye view.
Yes, so we of course have this broader perspective on different sciences and humanities, and data management, open sciences. These are principles that are very important for us, and we have several activities to promote this. But of course, we see the difficulties. And these difficulties are different in different disciplines. And working with polar researchers, we see that they are very advanced in this data culture anyway. But still, there is a big difference between some institutions in Poland, smaller institutions, and also on the level of single scientists. There are some scientists who are very well know how to deal with data management practices, and there are scientists who don't make their data sufficiently open. So what for me was, and I think I will just echo what Darek said, is the variety of activities in one program that we carried out that are complementary. So on one hand, we were training data stewards. On the other hand, we were training scientists with all those workshops. We were creating a space, a data system where the data can be fed. We discussed tools. There were our colleagues from European Open Science Cloud involved to see that if we are really meeting, how is our meeting the EOSC. And we have colleagues from SIOS. And so there is all those types of activities going on that we really have a bigger impact. And I think that this is most important.
Okay, good. Before I open for questions from the floor, so just prepare. if you have any questions to the panelists. Ostis mentioned that there are sort of two main objectives with these grants. You have this reduce social and economic disparities, but you also have this bilateral objective. And it was also mentioned that most of the projects funded under research programs, they have a bilateral component, perhaps because it's mandatory, which is not the case for the rest. So this is actually something that is special for the research programs. But it seems, at least from my perspective, because I represent the Research Council of Norway, that is working well. But I would like to you that has sort of been on the ground, how does this work? Does it bring value to the projects? Please, some reflections on that as well.
Well, let me just start by saying that this year of 2024, it was our 100th anniversary of relations with Norway and Portugal, which was really good. And so we've been working with Norway for 100 years now in several aspects of science and research. And I would say that for us, it's been essential. And in this project in particular, it was reassuring in the way that we were buying equipment that we had never had, like the Argo floats. IPMA was the first floats that we bought, and it was reassuring to have our colleagues from Norway saying, you know, these should be the sensors and this is why, and helping us in deciding. So that was very helpful. And also in the digital infrastructure. So Norway and IMR have one of the few accredited marine data centers in the world. So it was a really good help to have them in our meetings. And they were at the meetings with the people who were developing the infrastructure for us. And that was very helpful. So they were always there. There were a few meetings, even though there was COVID. So we had like 2 or 3 meetings in person, but most of them were were online, and they were always present, and they were always very helpful. So in my point of view, it was essential and reassuring to have this bilateral collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking about the bilateral cooperation from the perspective of Cryos and Harsfall projects, I think about 2 main points. The one is building a community. It was amazing to gather all the polar scientists, both from Norway and Poland, for several workshops or events like School of Polar Hydrology. So to initiate some cooperation, even if the Cryos and Harsfall project were the short projects for 1 and 1.5 year, we already now see the benefits of that and how it increased the cooperation between the scientists and how they are now working on some new projects of papers. And the second point about the bilateral activities, I think we were able to spend quite a lot of amount of money for mobility in the Harsfall project. So both for the Irikari researchers as for the experienced researchers. So I think that in last year we have a mobility of more than 70 people in total, and I think that something like 95% of that was in Norway. So I assume that it will bring a lot of benefits for bilateral cooperation between Poland and Norway in the future.
Great. Barbara?
So for me, the most important aspect concerning bilateral collaboration and any international collaboration actually is that it brings much more interdisciplinarity to the table, and these projects are much more interdisciplinary than our typical projects funded in national calls. And this makes it possible to address more complex issues. So this is a big benefit. There is knowledge exchange, and also concerning certain. So there is access to knowledge and technology that might be not available in the different countries. So this is a great benefit of bilateral cooperation. And also support to broader networks that are complementary and can work together. So there we see really a lot of different issues that are facilitated by the fact that there is bilateral or international collaboration going on.
Excellent. So now I open up the floor. If there is any questions, please raise your hand. There is one hand. It's belonging to Tor Ivar. Can somebody give him a mic?
Yeah, hi, I'm Tor Ekers from the Research Council Norway. A question to Tanja and Dario. As Astis mentioned in her introduction to the EA grants and Norway grants, said a stepping stone to the framework programs is important. Could you reflect a bit on how has these projects you have been participating in, do they serve that purpose? What could be done differently from the outset, from the call, even how the whole program is set up, in order to achieve even more as a stepping stone to the rest of the EU programs?
I think that we are really nice in line, especially that we were funded through the National Science Center, which serve for the basic research. So for all our activities especially in the Cryos project that was allocated to the installing of the infrastructure, is really in line with the priorities. I think if you are thinking about the future perspective, we can think still about data sharing, infrastructure, but again about the monitoring. The sustainable, harmonized monitoring that is optimized will serve a wider community and can be used not only in priorities that we are discussing now, but also for the priorities that we will discuss or have in the next initiatives. So this is something that is quite crucial. And in many communities, in many fields of the activities, people are saying about the short-time projects are important, are innovative, but we need to have a background for that. We need to have a long-time sustainable monitoring.
Yeah, well, I agree with Derek. We do need to work in the sustainability of the work, but the projects have been fundamental. This Atlantic Observatory, it strengthened us in terms of ocean observation. It provided the solution for the infrastructure, for the data management and sharing. So it is a stepping stone in that case. There's another project. It wasn't here. It wasn't. We didn't talk about it here, but it's in the same funding program. The equipment of our research vessel, Mário Ruivo. So we put some new research equipment, acoustic equipment, in the vessel with the EA grants funding. So in this sense, it was fundamental to provide, new platforms for research and to further evolve in the ocean monitoring. In our case of IPMA, so it is providing these steps and the strengthening of the institute and of the country, yes, and the objectives, yes.
Yeah, just to dig a bit in there, because I think both of you have said something about, aligning sort of procedures, infrastructure has been helpful. Have you seen any challenges in the same respect? When you're cooperating across borders, we have different procedures. We tend to do things a bit differently. Can you reflect a bit on that, how you have overcome those challenges?
Well, I think we live in an era where we're very fortunate because we are aware of that importance of having everything harmonized and standardized, and data has to be fair, findable, accessible, interoperable. So we have all the tools. I don't think it is a challenge. It is a challenge in the way that we have to get there, but it's very clear, the path. So everything's drawn out. So what we have to do is the steps and follow those standards to get to where we want to be. But I think that's pretty well defined, and I think we're fortunate in that sense.
I completely agree. We have so long cooperation that it's quite easy. I think that main problem that could happen that fortunately didn't happen for us is, as I said, we were able to make joint tenders in Poland for several universities. So that solved a problem that we have all the equipment harmonized. But I can imagine a situation that, for example, our Polish and Norwegian partners are buying the same system, for example, for the covariance towers. We cannot do a common tender for Polish and Norwegian institute. And if coincidentally they will buy a bit different equipment, that we will need to put a much more efforts to harmonize that. But this is something that we need to deal with. It's our internal and national regulations for that.
Questions from the floor? Yes, Astis.
Thank you. You mentioned in what ways the grants have actually done things a little bit differently from the national funding. Now, when we are in the period now of thinking about designing our support for the future, if we will have support for research in your countries, what would be your suggestions in addressing sort of gaps in your fields, or I mean, what would a dream call look like for you, or a predefined project?
Yeah, she mentioned the P word, the predefined. Oh, yes, please.
Okay, so I will start. If I'm thinking about the bilateral projects and maybe predefined projects, I think that, again, thinking about the infrastructure, data sharing, and monitoring, we can go a bit step further. So focus on the monitoring systems that are included in the international observing systems. So not focus on the smaller scale, but go a bit higher and also increase the data sharing and access to the real data in the real time. So it will be like a one component. And the second component is the component that was really strong in Harsfall project, mobility and a possibility of cooperation. And then we can include there, as I said before, this pilot studies, so that we are not fixed on one thesis or some goals that we need to reach, but we are creating a space or environment for the scientists just to discuss. We have a long fieldwork campaign spring last year that took like 3 weeks on Svalbard, and it was divided into 3 different groups of chemists, microbiologists and others. So they were sitting in the field for the 1 week, testing the equipment, make a standardization. And for as we have last week during the Polar Night Week in Longyearbyen, we have had the final report and presentation, and it was amazing. They are very happy about it because they were just like free to improvise, discuss, play with data, play with instruments, and now they are just preparing new projects and papers. So this is something that will be really nice to initiate some new ideas. Thank you.
Well, from the Portuguese point of view, we have a very large maritime territory. So we're very focused on and especially my institute, I'm talking about the IPMA. And there's a need for data, for monitoring, for ocean observation. It's never enough in the theme of climate change. Data is everything. So the models are only as good as the data that you put in them. So we are very eager to have more monitoring and more platforms for ocean observation. There's a lot of studies we have to do on vulnerable marine environments, on marine protected areas. There's a lot of the studies that have the Portuguese that we have to do because it's our territory and our jurisdiction. So I would say that investment in platforms, studies, ocean observing systems, that would be the way forward. Actually, we did have a meeting with our colleagues from IMR. They did go to Portugal a few months ago in a bilateral collaboration of the EEA grants, And we did talk a little bit about these ideas of projects for the next funding. And that was very, very enriching that we discussed it together. One of the things that we need is we only have the Mário Ruivo research vessel, and we do need another vessel for all of the fishing activities that we need to give response to. So there's a lot of needs. I could go on and on. But I would say that, in this aspect of keeping our marine territory studied, and we do need all of those platforms and ocean observation systems. And specifically now, and going a little bit towards the future of ocean observation, all autonomous ocean observation would be the way forward. Well, thank you.
Do you want to show your hands, Barbara? Okay, I respect that because, of course, both sides are discussing on the future, but I think it's quite obvious that we have much more to sort of dive into when it comes to research and innovation. We are getting towards the end. It says here in my notes that I need to summarize the whole thing. It has been a bit all over the place. It's been very interesting. I don't think I will be able to really give a good summary, but there was some takeaways. For example, that Tanya, you said that it's important to get the researchers to see the value of actually sharing the data. I think that is something that I will take back, building culture, interdisciplinarity research, also to take this further next step with monitoring, etc. So there's a lot of small words I've written here, but I won't bore you with reading them all. I will rather give the floor over to Eigil that will talk about a bit more of the future and how we can sort of align everything together in a greater sort of, what do you call it, in større enhet, høyere enhet, a higher unity. In Norwegian, that makes sense, probably not in English, but anyways, that will be your challenge, Egil. So, thank you very much to the panel.
Thank you, Rune. Am I on? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, excellent. Okay, so as was mentioned, my name is Egill Níelsson. So I'm from the Icelandic Center for Research, Rannís. As a person from a small country, I come with a lot of hats. So I'm a donor program partner for the EE and Norway grant. So Rannís is supporting sort of research, innovation, education, and culture towards the EE and Norway grants. But I also am a vice chair of the Arctic Science Funders Forum and an ExCo member of the European Polar Board and a council member of the International Arctic Science Committee, IASC. So what Rune mentioned is that we will try to sort of interlink this specific funding mechanism a bit into the broader picture of polar research and with more of a focus on the Arctic, as we are in the Arctic at the Arctic frontiers, so that's sort of natural. But I want to invite the panel to the stage. I will follow Rune's lead. I almost don't want to say either of the names for some of the participants, but I will at least do my best. But first, Jon Fugelstad from the Research Council of Norway and the chair of the Arctic Science Funders Forum. And then we also have Krzysztof Joiskov. You will introduce yourself in a bit from the National Science Center in Poland, the director of NCN. And Agnieszka, please come up, from the National Center for Research and Development in Poland, NCBR, where she heads the International Cooperation Department. And finally, Peter Schult from Sweden, who is the chair of the European Polar Board and from Umeå University. So thank you very much. As was mentioned, we will sort of have an introduction of yourself first, And we will start with Jon, because you also have slides.
So, yeah, there's the slide. It's not there. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Egil. My name is Jon Fuglestad, and on a daily basis, I'm a special advisor with the Research Council of Norway, and I'm also chair of the Arctic Science Funders Forum. So in this very short introduction, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Arctic Science Funders Forum, what it is and what it's not. Maybe I should start to disappoint you. The Science Forum doesn't have any funding. But the members of the Science Forum does have funding. The original of the Arctic Science Funders Forum is from the Arctic Science Ministerial meetings, which I would say has taken place. And it was in the joint statement of ministers in the meeting in Berlin in 2018 that was decided to establish a forum among international funders. And the forum was then established in 2020, where the ministers gave us a way forward and what we should achieve. Then we the chairship of the Funders Forum followed the Arctic Council chairship. And you all know what's happened, a few years ago with the invasion in Ukraine. So there was a standstill in the Funders Forum a couple of years during the Russian chairmanship of the Arctic Council. When Norway took over the chairship in 2023, we re-established the Arctic Science Funders Forum. So I would say we're still in an establishment phase. But what the Funders Forum should do is to coordinate priorities and share information among the members of the Funders Forum. And there are 28 countries who are members of the Funders Forum and the 6 permanent participants of the Arctic Council. That's the indigenous groups of the Arctic Council. In the Funders Forum, there should be a representative from national funding programs. And for the time being, it's national funding programs. There are also other funders of Arctic science, private foundations and other private funders. We're in the phase where we discuss if the private funders also should be members of the forum. But for the time being, it's a forum with the national science programs. We should develop or try to develop by a multilateral research programs. We use the Funders Forum as a platform for the national funders to come together, see if they have any common priorities, see what we can achieve in common, and maybe now especially towards the next International Polar Year, IPY. If we then want to develop a research program or big ideas or whatever as within the Funders Forum, we can take those ideas, bilateral, multilateral collaboration, take it outside of the Funders Forum and then develop it further. So the Funders Forum is primarily then a platform for people to come together, look at their national priorities, find common priorities, and then develop it outside the Funders Forum. Yeah, so I think I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jon. And if you could introduce yourself, Krzysztof.
Yes, so my name is Krzysztof Jóźwiak. However, I'm okay with any type of pronunciation. I represent the National Science Center, the main agency to found basic research in Poland. And we found basic research in open and bottom-up system of funding grants in the country. And I must say that I'm not a polar researcher, but I must say that polar research is really a strong sector in the country. They are very effective in this bottom-up system. They are really are very successful in getting grants in our domestic programs. However, we are obviously very interested in a very different international collaboration and bilateral, multilateral programs. And we are also very happy to be a part of EEA and Norway grants system. So we are part of funding of Harsfald and Cryos grants. We are also we organized another program which was already mentioned here. That's which is called a Greek program, in which we funded 33 grants, in which 7 of them they were granted to the polar researchers from very different areas. So it shows that really those. This sector, those people are very, very effective in, or they are very strong in doing research, in collaboration with, in foreign collaboration and so on. Yes, I guess that's it.
Thank you. And Agnieszka?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Agnieszka Ratajczak. I'm director of the International Cooperation Department at the National Center for Research and Development. NCBR is a research and innovation funding agency in Poland, and we fund applied research. So NCN funds basic research, as director just said, and we are the second agency and the sister agency that funds applied research and innovation projects. And our department runs currently more than 40 different international programs and funding scheme, with the EEA and Norway grants program being the biggest one when it comes to the total budget and the number of projects, bilateral projects. And it is actually our second program that we've been operating, so it is the second time that we've been entrusted with this important task of being a program operator. In the previous edition, we were the sole program operator from Poland, operating both basic and applied research. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also because for people that are not very familiar with the Norway grants, as Ásdís, of course, went over through in her presentation, there are 3 donor countries, so Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein, and then 15 beneficiary states. And these projects are, and with the research program, as Rune mentioned, they involve a bilateral component, but can be stepping stones towards larger international cooperation, and not the least in the European research area. So that's also why we have a Swede here. So if you could please introduce yourself, Peter.
I will. Thank you, Egil, and thank you for inviting me, despite the fact that I'm not a funder neither, but I'm interested in funding. And I've been around for a long time. Nobody remembers, but I'm a professor of historical demography. So basically interested in the epidemiological transition, the history of viruses and bacteria, and the relation to human mortality, including the Northern Hemisphere for sure. I was the first director of our Sami Research Center 25 years ago. I was the first director of our Arctic Research Center. I was the first director of the Arctic 6 Cooperation, a Nordic cooperation, Sweden, Finland, Norway. I've been president of IASA, chair of University of the Arctic Board of Governors, chair of the Barents Euro-Arctic Cooperation, chair of IASC, Human and Social Working Group, and now I am the chair of the European Polar Board, EPB. I hope almost that's the last chair position I will have. EPB is an organization with 30 years behind it, 31 members from 22 countries, including Poland, including Portugal, including Iceland and Sweden, of course. And our mission is to promote and coordinate advanced polar research and to give independent policy advice, to provide a single collaborative platform for our common efforts. And key words in our activities are, of course, logistics, infrastructures, observations, and not least, cooperation. And we try to produce communication tools and platforms to meet these ambitions. And we do this very much through European Union-funded projects, such as the EU Polar Cluster, a network for various projects where EPB is a permanent member, the Arctic Passion, observation systems, and now not least Polarin, who follow up on EU PolarNet 2, providing access to infrastructures in the polar areas, in various, that's vessels, that's polar stations, and so on. And recently taking the initiative to establish EPCO, the European Polar Communication Office, that is developed in cooperation, not least with the European Union Commission, a catalyst platform connecting polar observation actors and promoting stakeholder engagement. We also strive to produce synthesis reports and white papers to give advice, to give recommendations, and to put people together. Polar research planning is, of course, an essential part of these activities too. But basically, our new keywords in the recently established report says coordination, collaboration, and communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And also, to put it into perspective, EPB also has members from Bulgaria, Czech Republic, and Estonia of the beneficiary states, and of course Norway, as a donor state. So the idea is also that, I mean, the bilateral projects that come through the Norway grants, whether it's Norway, Iceland, both, and with the beneficiary states, they can expand their networks, for example, through the European Polar Board, and now we have a new exciting development in Umeå with the EPCO, the European Polar Coordination Office. But to move it back to Poland a bit, because we have had outlines of the projects and sort of the benefits of them, etc., but from maybe the funding or funders' side, sort of the question we have is what benefits do you see from this polar aspect of the Norway grants in the research program in the current period? And do you see it as something that can contribute towards these international sort of forums, organizations such as the Arctic Science Funders Forum and the European Polar Board and other related entities? And if we could maybe start with Agnieszka. Now, or if you want to start, though, that's, yeah.
I can talk about the previous edition, because this is where we had the opportunity to fund polar research projects, but maybe we should start with the current one. I don't know.
No, you can, if you go back to the...
All right. NCBR had an opportunity to fund polar research projects in the previous edition of EA and Norway grants. And at that time, we funded 13 polar research projects with more than 10 million euros. And actually, because it was the first time we had an opportunity to fund projects in this area, because on a daily basis, we do not have polar research area in our portfolio. It is more the It is more the National Science Center that funds these kind of projects in Poland. So on the whole, our impression was that all those projects or the project proposals that were submitted in the call were very strong. The scientific sort of basis or the scientific standing of all the institutions and researchers involved was very, very high. And all the project proposals received very high scores in international evaluation. So it was like, I mean, as it was said, polar research community in Poland is not very big, but it's very strong, with very well established international links, and that was also proof to that. And if I could just summarize a little bit, so out of those 13 projects, there were about 50 different international publications, mostly joint publications, different exchange of knowledge and experiences through different fora and working groups. For example, through Forum for Arctic Modeling and Observational Synthesis, at meetings of the Arctic and Subarctic Ocean Fluxes Working Group and the Ocean Hydrography Working Groups. Both teams that implemented the project kept on cooperating after the program ended, and they submitted proposals to different funding schemes, be it national in Poland or in Norway or international. So I think that there were at that time about 10 new projects that received funding, which sort of started in our program at that time. Also, I think that in general the cooperation is ongoing and also is funded by different international programs. I just checked recently that in Horizon Europe right now there are 4 polar research projects that are ongoing, both with participation of both Norwegian and Polish institutions and researchers, also with researchers coming from other countries, because as we know, Horizon Europe requires a bigger consortia with at least 3 different institutions coming from 3 different countries. And so this cooperation is ongoing, and it's very strong. Right now, in the current program that is coming to a close, we have one project which is sort of a gem in our different portfolio of projects. We had in our program a small grant scheme which was directed to female researchers in technical sciences, and it was to help them in advancing their research career, their research path. So there was one project implemented by a Polish female researcher to help her with her PhD thesis, and it was in polar research, evaluated very high with very big impact factors and publications in very prestigious journals. So that is what we have right now directly in polar research. But we also had, in this current perspective, 9 projects in climate change area for a total budget around 10 million euros. And climate change area is also, of course, related to polar research in many aspects. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Please.
Well, I could perhaps repeat everything what Agnieszka has said. Indeed, this polar researcher or climate researchers is a very strong community, maybe not very large. However, they are really strong and very and running very well internationally recognized research, and we also have plenty of such examples. Talking about benefits, I would also underline the fact that this is important for the research funding agency to cooperate with other research funding agencies from other countries. We can exchange experience, we can exchange good practice, we can make mapping, we discuss priorities, which is obviously beneficial for us, but also beneficial for all the network of those organizations which are cooperating on those programs. And I think this is very, very important aspect which needs to be underlined. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jon, if you want to comment on that, and then...
Yeah, thank you very much, because what you mentioned is exactly what we try to do in the Arctic Science Funders Forum, for the countries to come together, discuss common priorities, discuss common interests. Instead of those 28 countries who are now members of the Funders Forum talk bilaterally to each other, then come to the Funders Forum meeting, participate in the Funders Forum, and then you can see if you have 2, 3, 4 other countries who have the same interest in you, and then you can develop it outside the forum. But the Funders Forum in itself is a platform for people in national science programs to come together and discuss exactly what you mentioned. And I've said now a couple of times there are 28 member countries for the time being, and those are those countries who have participated in the Arctic Science Ministerial meeting. Most probably, we don't see the next Arctic Science Ministerial coming up, probably not. So the member countries are not cut in stone for the Funders Forum. We discuss if we're going to involve more countries, and we can do, and I can see several of the countries who receive EEA and Norway grants, they also have Arctic science projects, so they perfectly well can come and join the Funders Forum. And the Funders Forum has lots of member countries in Europe, North America, and Asia, like China, Singapore, India, Japan are members. So it's a global forum for science programs to come together.
Mm-hmm. Maybe because we are getting to the short end of the session, could you elaborate a bit on how this can also be linked towards the future when it comes to the ICARP process for process IPY5 in 2032-33, etc.?
Yeah, I would say these days here in Tromsø, both the ICARP, the International Conference on Arctic Research Planning, and especially the next International Polar Year, will be discussed in several sessions. There's a whole day science session today about IPY. IPY is, I would say, the backbone on all Arctic research planning now for the next years, and the priority topics of EEA and Norway grants, I would say most of them are valuable for Arctic science and can also be developed for calls within Arctic science. Because as I say many times, Arctic science is not thematic limited. It's a geographical area where all sorts of social sciences, natural sciences, humaniora can be performed within a geographical area. So not only in natural sciences, even if natural sciences is probably those themes which are, I'll say, most common in the Arctic, but towards IPY, we need to develop programs within social sciences, humaniora, and natural sciences. So it aligns very well, I think, with most of the topic programs in EEA and Norway grants.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, and Peter, if you wouldn't mind elaborating a bit more on the European context, because as was mentioned, there are 5 of the beneficiary states that are involved in the European Polar Board now. 10 of them could join, or 10 additional ones. How would they go about that? And what would be the benefits what are the benefits for members to join the EPB? And maybe if you could tell us a little bit about the changes taking place for the EPB, where it's moving and so on, and the fact that we actually have a new executive secretary from Greece as well, which is a beneficiary state.
Yes, true. who fell on the ice and had a concussion the other day. That's really sad, but she's recovering. EPB is a European platform, as you say. Not all European countries are members. I wish they were, because I honestly believe there are benefits for every country to join in the Arctic and polar activities, reminding you that EPB is also in the Antarctic and also, of course, very climate and with rising temperatures driven research, of course, but including a lot of other activities. And I believe that from what I've heard today on the projects that have already taken place here, I appreciate and I believe that data sharing and accessibility proved by Cryos and Harsvald projects, for example, with real-time data sharing is important, and EPB can provide a platform for developing those exercises. The research alignment is supported, interdisciplinary activities, coordinating ambitions, and internationalization generally is supported by the EPB and providing members an opportunity to be part of large-scale European Union-funded projects, which also then naturally include cross-border cooperation. And that is in the interest of everyone, I think, today, that we realize that together we are stronger. And that's how we try to work, to increase and strengthen European cooperation. And we miss from your funding states Latvia, Lithuania, and Romania. And I believe they have good interest in at least investigating what the membership could give to them. And I must say I have a personal interest in Latvia. I am the honorary consul of Latvia to northern Sweden. And one of my tasks is to engage their universities in various research activities. And they have expressed a true ambition to increase their activities in Arctic research especially. And I must say also that the priorities here, green transition, democracy, and social inclusion, are themes that could be promoted within the EPB too, because we are very natural science driven. But me, as a social scientist, mean, of course, that there are so much more that is needed in terms of research activity and, in the end of that, recommendations and advice. I also wish that we can help each other to improve the long-term project strategies. It is a problem that the project is only 3, 4, or 5 years. It is a problem that projects are not always properly coordinated. So we need these meetings to sit down and see how different various projects can fit together, can link together, and actually produce more together than as a single actor.
Thank you. I would like to open up for questions from the audience. Please. I think we have time for maybe one more question after this one, if someone wants to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Justyna Woźniakowska. I'm the head of the International Cooperation Department at the National Science Center. And I have a question to both Jon and Peter related to your platforms, because your platforms are, as you said, for collaboration, coordination, and communication. But my question is whether you ever considered using the platform that you create for actual joining forces by research funders who are largely represented there to actually get involved into research funding as such, to create networks that could join forces, join financial resources in a way that European networks do, like, I don't know, Eranet previously, now partnerships, to actually fund projects. The reason why I'm asking that is that, of course, EA and Norway grants are absolutely excellent, but they come every 7 years. And we need some sustainability in that. So what Darek said is that, there's a lot of mobility going on, there is a lot of interaction, a lot of ideas, new ideas can be born thanks to these programs. But how then are we supporting these ideas? So this is my question, whether you ever considered doing the actual funding, maybe not involving all the members, because not all the members are research funders, as I understand, but at least having this as one of your activities, because I think this would be feasible. Thank you.
Well, I can briefly begin. As you say, only a few of our members are funding organizations, but they assist us a lot in realizing the European Union Commission funding through the Horizon process, of course. And that has been tremendously important to us. And the support given by our Research Council members has been extremely important. And now we take the step, as I said, to establish EPCO, the Polar Coordination Office. And the efforts there strive so much to do exactly what you say, because I think, too, that is the way to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the question. And yes, we are discussing it, absolutely. In the Funders Forum now, the next meeting we will have, we're specifically going to discuss how many of the funders, members of the forum, want to contribute to an international call. We have discussed both Nordforsk and Belmont Forum as possible entities for us to add funding into. We come to the Funders Forum meeting, we say, yeah, 4, 5, 6, 7 countries want to put funding into, let's say, a Belmont Forum call, and then we develop that call together with the Belmont Forum. Yep.
Yep. Thank you. I believe that we are out of time. We want to thank you for attending this session, and hopefully, well, you learned something about the Norway grants and sort of both, of course, regarding the projects, data and access, and then on the sort of funding landscape and cooperation towards projects. And you can also bother at least these two gentlemen on the Arctic Science Funders Forum and the European Polar Board. And I thank you as well very much for your participation. So thank you very much.